Hey y'all, welcome back for part 3 of my anniversary Telecaster build. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, go back and view those on my channel and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss parts 4 and 5. Let's get started with the build today. Thanks for coming. Here's a little better look at some of the parts I'm going to be using for the control plate and controls. I've got two solid shaft 250K CTS pots, a three-way CRL switch, and a Fender control plate. It's the American control plate with the 3/8 holes. I've also got a set of knurled knobs that fit on a Telecaster. They're like the solid shaft knobs. And I also have a polyester film capacitor that I'm going to be using for my tone cap, and I've got a little treble bleed circuit that I made that I'll explain in a minute. So got those things, and let's just take this stuff out of the package. Alright, well, looks like most things came with screws. The control plate came with screws. The pots came with the nuts and the washers, but the CRL switch did not come with screws. So let me hunt down some screws that'll work. Alright, well, I got a little bit lucky, and I do have the exact screws that I need. These are actually new ones, and I know they came off another switch, so I'm happy about that. So let's assemble this. I'm going to assemble this with the plate facing the outside of the guitar. And I don't think there's really a right way or a wrong way. That's being really particular though, honestly. Okay, the pots get installed with a little knurled washer. They get it put over the pot first so that that knurled washer makes contact with the pot and with the back of the control plate. And then the pots get installed with the terminals facing each other. Okay. And then I think what I'll do before I screw those down is make sure that my knobs fit all the way down to the base plate. Yeah, actually they fit with just a little room to spare, which is kind of where I want them. So those are okay to tighten up. Let's go ahead and install this one first. Alright, so they're going to be facing each other basically. So these terminals, I'm going to have my capacitor running across one to the other, so I want that capacitor sort of tucked in between. And then there will be some other wiring that's going between them, but this is the way to orient them so that there's the shortest runs of wire. Well, I had to stop myself because I started to wire this up without filming it. I thought, oh, you know what? I promised I would film every step, so I just soldered in. I've got this 0.47 microfarad cap, and I just soldered it in to the center lug on what will be the tone pot. And then on the volume pot, I bent back this far lug here, which is the one that you want to ground. You want to ground one side of the volume pot. And I've routed that other side of that capacitor through that lug and over the top of the volume pot. And now I need to solder that lug to the wire for the cap, and then the cap wire to the ground. That just grounds all those spots right there. Eventually, I'm going to connect these two lugs together. These are the two lugs, like the volume pot gets connected straight to the tone pot at the point where the pickups come in, basically, and then the input jack to the center lug, or output jack, whatever, the jack, to the center lug, and then that's actually the tip connection of the jack, and then the ring connection of the jack gets grounded to the pots like everything else. Now I've seen multiple people do it multiple ways. Sometimes the tip gets soldered in here and the ground gets grounded there, the ring gets grounded there. I don't think that matters. I mean, you know, when you connect these things together, I usually run a ground wire between the two. This control plate being metal actually does ground these two together quite well, so You want all your components grounded together, but these basically are. But I don't know. We'll see how the mood strikes me. I'll look around at different ways to do this and see what looks the best. You also have to have basically a solid wire connecting 4 points here on the switch, and then a wire connecting those 4 points to the volume pot so that it gets a signal from the pickups. So we will work together and get that on there. The two pickups that come in, I think they come into the very outside points to the common points. I'll have to check the wiring diagram, but I'm pretty sure that the two pickups get wired to the commons, and then there's 4 points in the middle that get wired together. So let me trim a little bit and finish up this ground. By the way, the reason I bend this like this, I like to see the word CTS on the pot. I'm just a brand name freak, I guess, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that's what that is. Alright, so that connects the cap to that lug. And that lug, I've bent it back toward the pot, but I didn't bend it back all the way because I wanted the leg of the capacitor to go through the eyelet and onto the surface of the pot. You can do it multiple ways. The point is that you want all three things grounded. Sometimes I've seen people bend back the capacitor and ground it to this pot. It doesn't make much difference really at the end of the day, but I think this looks better. Sorry, the air conditioner just kicked on. There's nothing I can do about that, but I'll fix that in a minute. When I'm doing this kind of work, it helps to have a nice flat tip on the end of my soldering iron. It's just the tip that works best to solder to the base of a pot. And I have my temperature set pretty high, but I actually don't think I have it high enough for that connection, so I'm going to turn it up a little bit and wait. While I'm waiting, I've got this pushback cloth wire, and I just cut a little piece to go between the two pots here. So when you cut this cloth wire, you cut it off to length, and then you actually literally push back the shielding, or not shielding, but the jacket, the insulation. And that's all you need to do to expose the end of the wire. You don't need any wire strippers at all. That looks a little better. Not perfect because I didn't get it perfect the first time around, but still pretty good. Okay, so this wire goes straight between the two pots. This lug of the tone pot ends up not getting used at all. You can do with it what you want, but I just leave it the way it is. So this lug here, I'm going to leave it unsoldered for a moment because it's got to have the wire coming off of it onto the switch itself. So I leave it unsoldered so that when I make that second connection, I finish up that joint. Alright, let's do this connection here. I'm going to get a piece of copper wire for that one. This is not the good cloth wire. This is just some cheapo solid wire. Well, I think the best way to do this one is to come in from, basically make a V out of this. Come in from the two center positions, which those get connected together. Then expand this. That gets my connection through the two center ones. Then this needs to go to this side of this one. This needs to go to this side of this one. So it makes kind of a Z. But it's not going to go in nicely. I've got to cut this off a little bit. Okay, now we can solder in this switch. Alright, well that's the switch, and I actually probably should have left one of those lugs open, but Just solder this in a Z pattern here, and the reason I should have left one open is so that I can make the connection to the volume pot, but I'll fix that here in a second. Okay, well this would get me a basic connection. I've got the volume pot wired into the switch is wired, then I've got the tone pot wired into the volume pot. The only things I don't have on here now are the input jack, output jack, just the jack in general, and then I've got the pickups that I've got to wire in, but the pickups are going to come much later. I can probably go ahead and do that jack though. I think also I'm going to go ahead and run a ground between the pots. I'll try to find a spot that looks good enough to do it. Alright, well it's time to work on the jack. This is a Switchcraft jack. I harp on these, but they're the best quality. Then I'm going to install some cloth wire, and I told you the lugs I was going to put them on. This middle lug on the volume pot gets my white wire. My black wire goes to a ground. So let's get this white wire soldered in place. And now the ground wire goes to the back of a pot. Alright, then one thing I always do is twist together the two wires that go to the output jack, and the reason is that if you have a ground wire that's wrapped around a signal wire, it provides some level of shielding. So that's why I do the twist. Alright, so that is more or less it. So this is enough length to get me from the control cavity to the output jack, you know, the ferrule that holds this thing in, and that's all I really need. So that's going to sit right in the cavity of the Telecaster, and it's going to give me just basically the right amount of length that I need without being too much. I don't want a bunch of extra wire wrapped inside the cavity. I think what I'll do now is load these knobs on, and we'll call this thing done. When I put knobs on, I go ahead and rotate the pots all the way to the right. Then I install the knobs so that the screws point away from the guitarist, or basically toward the ground when you're holding the guitar at playing position. Alright, well this is ready. I just have to get a switch tip and obviously wire in the pickups and the bridge ground, but the pickups and the bridge ground I will twist together and wire right here to this empty spot on the back of this pot, and then the signal wire from the pickups goes into these two common lugs on the very outside poles. So let's take a break from electronics just a bit. I have set the neck pickup in here and just sort of taped it in place. None of this is permanent. I'll film the rest of the control plate and electronics installation later, but I thought what I'd go ahead and do is install the strap buttons. If you've seen me do strap buttons in the past, you've seen me do a trick with some masking tape to run it all the way down, and you know, I like that trick, but I have discovered that some masking tape can be just a little bit, I don't know, just cut a little bit weird, and I thought I'm wasting a lot of masking tape doing that, so I'm trying a piece of string this time. So I have taped a piece of string up to basically the center of the nut, and I've run the string all the way down. I'm going to use the same technique where I sort of keep tension on the back of the string and try to align everything with the center of the dots on the neck, and then make sure that I'm roughly at the center of the bridge. And then carry that line all the way down and just mark it with a pencil. So that's the line for the center of the base of the guitar for that strap button, and then I will basically take a ruler and measure out the left to right center, or front to back center of the guitar. Let's do that now. So this guitar is about 1 3/4 wide, so it's going to need to be about 7/8 from the edge, which puts it right here. Double check that measurement from both sides. It could be a little lower. 7/8. 7/8. Alright, so now I'm in the center. And just like every other hole that I drill, I'll take a center punch, mark that. Now I've got a nice hole where the bottom strap button goes. Let's drill that out. Alright, now I'm going to grab one of my felt washers, spin that onto one of my strap buttons with the screw inserted. Alright, and then take the screwdriver. Alright, that looks good. So I'm going to do the same procedure that I did on the brown cedar Telecaster and the yellow Telecaster. So if you want to look at the way to install the upper strap button, it's going to be just the same as those, but basically you install those almost at the peak of the horn, or the top horn on the Telecaster, but you do it set a little bit to the inside so that the strap button, or the strap, holds the button a little better. So you can watch those videos if you're interested in that process. Well, this has been episode 3. I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget, there's 2 more parts to this series, episodes 4 and 5, and you'll want to subscribe if you like these videos so that you don't miss those. And thanks a lot, and I'll see you guys next time.